The J stands for J.
Triage X is a manga by Shoji Sato, a familiar name to be sure if you've read the High School of the Dead series. Just as a preface, if you liked High School of the Dead, this manga will probably appeal to your sensibilities, so if you don't want to be spoiled about the plot of Triage X, you'll want to turn away from this video now. If you need a little more to go on before you make the decision to read this manga, then you come to the right place. Triage X is written for fans of Michael Bay movies, Indiana Jones aficionados, those who enjoy the high school subplot, because, I mean, it's not like it's getting old or anything, and admirers of the female form, also known as your typical horny teenager. Triage X is a story about a secret organization named Black Label, who believe that they are the doctors that will purge evil, aptly named tumors, from the city. Over the course of the first arc, we are introduced to our protagonist, Arashi Mikami, a high school student with a dark past who joined the organization as one of their assassins. For those who think they may have heard the term triage before, triage is a medical term referring to the process of determining the priority of a patient's treatments based on the severity of their condition. So as you can see, they take the medical theme all the way, with their base being hidden under the city's hospital, and some of the doctors and nurses being assassins of the organization. This theme is hard to focus on, for me personally, because the mangaka seems hell-bent on sticking a large amount of flesh into my face. Once again, I'll say that if you've read High School of the Dead, you'll probably be okay with whatever comes your way, but personally, I feel as though it makes it hard to focus on the plot, and with good reason. Sadly, the plot is painfully average, with one-dimensional characters who are full of themselves enforcing their own brand of justice on the city. Basically, imagine Light Yagami if he had money, guns, and breasts. But seriously, it's a really stale formula with no crazy twists, as it has flat villains that seem too evil to be true and the most self-righteous happy-go-lucky heroes covering all the common character tropes. That, regrettably, brings us to the characters. For those who have watched High School of the Dead, they know that there are two males in the main cast, which I feel stops it from becoming an all-out harem. But in Triage X, because there is only a singular male protagonist in the cast, all of the well-endowed women essentially flock to him like cats in heat. And although they do all have their own traits, with no development, this makes them very stale, and makes whatever they spout white noise to me. Of course I say this because the only real development we get in the first two volumes are for the protagonist, so you can probably just think up your own explanations for the rest of the cast. I like to think that they were all recruited after walking out of the plastic surgeon's office. Of course, that's not to say they don't look as real as breasts literally the size of my head could be. So, without any real development of the rest of the main cast, they only leave a small impression, with the only characters I really remember being the male and female lead. This leaves me to identify the other members of the cast by their breasts, and I know that makes me sound a little misogynistic. Okay, very misogynistic. But with the amount of time they spend sticking cleavage in your face, I think it's forgivable. And speaking of breasts, it's good to know that the mangaka knows what he's good at drawing, or I really would have stopped on the first chapter. The art for me is Triage X's saving grace. The mangaka does action well even though he covets design over practicality. I mean, in their little organization of about 8 people, they have a mansion-sized hideout many leagues underground below a hospital. Absurd, I know! And this absurdity also finds its way into the costume design because the only character with a practical attire for getting shot at is the one and only male character in the cast. Typical. I mean, he gets a bulletproof suit and his partner goes into a gunfight in her underwear? For those ignorant enough to defend this, I know you could say that she's so good at her job, she doesn't need to wear the very practical bulletproof suit that could probably save her life. It's just unnecessary weight, and if I suspend my disbelief, it could be a valid explanation, especially in a manga. But my problem is, she's not that good. There's even a scene after she gets shot where they ask her if she wants to wear Arashi's uniform, and no, of course she doesn't do it. That aside, at least the costumes look good. The characters in the backgrounds look pleasant, and the action scenes are well choreographed, and although they go a little bit overboard during their missions, with the general concept of the show, it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. Overall, with a lackluster story that barely kept me reading, the one-dimensional characters, and the exorbitant amounts of cleavage being stuffed in my face, Triage X left me wanting in the ways of a more serious story. The author is obviously trying for comedy, but because the comedy is so anatomically focused, for those who are not the target of that brand of comedy, it falls flat on its face, and brings the manga to the more serious side of things where it doesn't have a leg to stand on. So, from the individual categories of plot, characters, art, and my overall enjoyment of the manga, it gets a 6.2 out of 10 from me, being better than average for the art. I am clearly not the target audience for the manga, but if guns, explosions, and breast-based comedy appeals to you, you may want to give it a chance. It is currently being published in North America by Yen Press, entitled Triage X, at a fairly cheap price point. If you enjoy it, please support the author. If not, Well, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you want me to review a specific manga, please write it down in the comments below. This is Jay telling you to stay frosty.